What's going on, everybody? It's going to be a little bit of an unconventional video from me, different than what you're probably used to seeing. Not on purpose. I actually was trying a new chest mount, and it just didn't work for me. So I scrapped all the footage, and we're going to go from this rear camera, and I'm just going to sort of go through my day and tell you how I failed. And what my thought process was starting the tournament, halfway through the tournament, you know, all that kind of stuff. And we're just going to kind of go through where I messed up. And there's a lot of factors. But one big factor is, you guys know, if you know me, some of you may not know, I don't pre-fish hardly ever. I'll pre-fish on a lake that I'm unfamiliar with just because I like to go see what I'm looking at, but I get a lot out of just looking at the water clarity, what it looks like. I know what I like to do, and I know what I'm looking for. And if the fish just aren't there, then they just aren't there. And sometimes I live and die with that situation. But on Beaver Lake, I've fished here dozens of times. I typically don't pre-fish. And, you know, sometimes it works really well for me. Sometimes it bites me in the butt. And today was one of those days that it bit me in the butt. The weekend before this tournament, we had 55, 57 degree water temperatures, and you know, it was typical first, second week of April. The week leading up to the day of this event, we had 6 straight days of sunny, 70 degrees, warm nights, and it increased the water temperature dramatically. I assumed that the fish would be moving up, which they did, and I assumed that they would be moving up and that I could fish for them because I thought that they would sort of be moving up but not necessarily moving straight onto the beds. Well, after talking to some people, what I saw with my own eyes, all that stuff, it was pretty clear that I had made a grave error. But you know, there was a couple of decisions that I made throughout the day that led me to also not knowing. There was just a lot of things that compounded my decision making, I guess. But anyway, we'll go through this day, and I'll show you a few of the fish that I caught, which wasn't very many. I only caught 4, but I'll kind of give you a voiceover here of what my thought process was during the day, and how I grossly underestimated just how much the fish would go from offshore staging to on the beds, which it was wild to me. So anyway, we will start here in just a second at about lines in, and I'll kind of tell you what I was thinking. There we go, 6:30. Time to rock and roll. Well, this water really, I think one of the big keys today, and I may be way wrong about this, but there's so much flooded stuff. I think one of the big keys might be to actually try to get away from so much flooded stuff. And fish more, try to fish as much isolated stuff as I can. Basically, you've heard me talk about it before, getting to the bank. I think getting to the bank where there's not just a sea of bushes where you couldn't possibly flip them all or fish around all of them. I think that's going to be key today. And we may find some fish on some beds. I'm a terrible bed fisherman, but if I see an easy one, give it a try. So I started out on this main lake point, and you heard me say getting to the bank. I thought that was going to be key on the day. But, you know, the Beaver is almost as high as it can get. It's about 6 inches from going over the spillway. It's about as high as it even will be allowed to be, because it can't hold any more water. So everything is flooded. There's just flooded stuff everywhere, and I hate getting into just a sea of bushes and flooded things, because you just can't possibly fish it all. So I thought, I'm going to try to get to the bank. I'm going to try to focus on maybe areas with maybe a little steeper banks where I could actually get to the bank. So I started out here on the main lake on a point at the mouth of this spawning pocket, and started to make my way back in. And the worst possible thing happened that probably could have happened was in about the first 5 minutes I caught a fish, which all it did was just give me more reason to keep doing what I was doing. And I think it was one of those false fish, and it definitely got me headed the wrong direction right out of the gate. There's just 1,000 bushes down here underneath me, because the lake is so flooded. Whoa, that's good luck. Okay, oh, that's smallmouth. $13 3/4. Gonna have to get rid of him. One fish, so. Someone's way out here on the outside edge of these bushes. If that's where we're going to catch them today, that's great. So you heard me say right there, way out here on the outside edge, and it was just a little smallmouth, and we'd have to get rid of it eventually to do any good. So immediately, this fish just reinforced, even though it was a small fish, it just reinforced what I should not be doing. It was just a random fish. I also need to say, this water that I'm fishing is incredibly clear. It's probably 8 to 10 feet right here. I actually get into some cleaner water, even more cleaner water later. But this is probably 8 to 10 feet. And I also need to, it is considerably darker outside than what it looks. I also have to say, and this is going to come up, I also have to say that we were supposed to get some weather. And I don't know if you guys have seen the hailstorm video up in Missouri of the dude that was dodging mortar shots. But this was the exact same day and the exact same storm, and we didn't get it as much. We got some rain and some lightning and some high winds, but we didn't get near what they got. But that was actually coming down the pike later in the day. And, you know, I'm not a fan of bad weather. I don't like to fish in it. I don't like to be out in the lightning, period. I won't be. So sometimes I let that influence my decision making more than I should. And here in a minute, it probably derails my entire tournament day, but I don't know that yet. So at this point, I've been fishing for about an hour, working my way towards the back of the pockets. Had a couple of boats actually pass me. The pocket forks at the back, and there's two coves, I guess, in the back of this long pocket, and there was one boat in each one. And you know, had I gone back there and actually seen what was going on, maybe while it was so still outside. Maybe I could have learned something. But also, I don't know if you can see over my shoulder, but there's a pretty dark cloud that's developing that's coming quick. And I'm looking at the weather app on my phone right here, and it's not saying much, but I can see it with my eyes. And, I just, like I said earlier, I don't like being out on the lake in a thunderstorm. It's my thing. We all have our thing. Some people it's snakes or heights or whatever it might be. Mine is being out on the lake in a thunderstorm. It's incredibly ironic that since I work with live electricity on the regular at my day-to-day job, but yeah, I don't know. Maybe that's why I have such a healthy respect for it, and I know what it can do. That's just the way it is. But either way, I decided, you know what, maybe this isn't the area. I've been fishing for an hour. I only have one. I'm going to head back towards the truck and try something else, and that's completely different than what I'm doing, and just see what we can do. So I'm on my way back to the truck, and the leading edge of the storm passes, and it's basically that's all it is, and of the front, I guess, not the storm. And it's really just cloudy after that. It's nothing big, it wasn't anything. But I decided to fish this bank because I had fished a bunch of shallower stuff, not necessarily shallower, but kind of some little pockets and little points and stuff like that, and I really hadn't fished anything kind of steeper and bluffier. So I decided to pull up on here because I was thinking, maybe if the fish are, just kind of coming up, maybe I could catch some on here before they actually make it back to the back. So I, drag some stuff on the bottom, throw some spinner baits, throw a fluke, wacky worm, all that kind of stuff, and basically get a big old nothing. So now we're closing in on 2 hours with only one fish. And so I leave the bluffier bank and head across the big creek arm that I'm in. And there's some shallower, flatter pockets, and they're really choked out with bushes. But, there hadn't been much going on so far. So I thought, well, maybe I'll go over there and try that. So I run across the lake and check this and see what's up. So now I'm sort of in the back of a little pocket. Decided to pick up a 6-inch swim bait just to see what would happen. See if I could get any followers, just anything, just some kind of a clue. And absolutely nothing. I fished another pocket that was just like this one. Nothing again. Went out on the main lake, fished a big rock pile and, anywhere from 10 to 25 feet, and still nothing. So at this point, I'm pretty deflated, and I'm thinking, okay, what's going on here? Because I had figured absolutely nothing out. So now we're coming up on 10 o'clock, and I've really got to start figuring something out. What you guys don't see is my repeated cast with a fluke, a jig, shaky head, all kinds of other stuff, just to try to figure out how to get a bite. I feel like my inexperience showed up a lot in this tournament. My inexperience on how to pre-fish well, my inexperience on what to do this time of the year when you can't seem to just be able to fish for them. I started heading back. The launch that I launched at was in the very, very back of a creek, and me and Dwayne Beatty were the only two people that launched back here, and I had looked at the standings just to kind of see how everybody was doing, and I noticed that he had 3. And I also noticed that he was in kind of the jungle. I mean, he was back behind the bushes, going real slow. In 3 hours, 4 hours, he hadn't moved more than maybe 500 yards. And I thought, oh my gosh, are these fish actually that much on beds? Are they up cruising shallow this far back? Is this what's going on? Have I really missed it? And so I decided to kind of go back there and go behind him and just see if I could see anything back here in the very, very back of this creek up super shallow. right here you can see that I get my first real clue. I'm looking over to my left, water's super clear, and I see about a 16-inch bass just kind of cruising the bank. Not on a bed, just kind of cruising the bank. And I thought to myself, is that what's going on? Are they back here just kind of cruising, looking for spots to make beds? I still didn't exactly know what was going on, but that was my first real clue. I was in the very back of a creek, and it was the first real sign of life that I had seen. So I thought, okay, I need to explore this a little bit more. But I also knew where Dwayne was at and knew that he had probably fished this to death for the past 3 or 4 hours. And so at this point, here in just a little bit, the wind starts to pick up, which makes it, in this area, makes it really tough to see. I also don't have a good pair of sunglasses, and so because I have bifocals, I know, insert old jokes here. I have a pair of clip-on sunglasses that are not very good, but it makes a huge difference to have good sunglasses, and I haven't spent the money to pay for a good pair of prescription sunglasses. But at this point, I'm like, okay, I know where there's another place. I'm going to move to that place, and I'm going to see if anybody's been there. And the launch is also in the very back of a long creek, and it's super protected from the wind. I'm going to go back there after this and see if I can't get bit. So I made a move. At this point, it's about 11:15, and I moved to a spot where I knew it was real close to the back of a real long creek arm. Everything's flooded, as you can see. And I'm in about 3 feet of water here, maybe. And I stood up periodically and looked, and I could see beds, but I just couldn't see any fish. And so I was trying to figure out what was going on. That didn't make sense to me. Why there would be beds, because the lake's never up this high, or hardly ever. Why there would be beds here, but no fish. Come to find out later, fairly certain that there's probably fish around. I just spooked them off because I was so close to them. We'll talk about that here in a little bit. But yeah, so at this point, my head's a little bit spinning because I'm thinking, okay, well, maybe they're not in the backs of these pockets. I've saw one fish cruising at the other place, and I looked at the standings, and Dwayne had 3 fish, and he had been back there for 4 or 5 hours. And I come to another place, and I'm back here in the back, and I'm still not seeing anything. So at this point, I'm just as confused as ever. I tried to get out in the wind a little bit and throw a spinnerbait around. That proved to also be futile. So now it's about 11:30, and I come up on this little stretch of almost vertical bluff, but at the bottom of this vertical bluff, it's about 9 or 10 feet deep, and that's where the old bank line is. And I kept thinking, well, maybe we're about 500 yards from the back of the pocket now, maybe a little more. I'm thinking, well, maybe this little 100-yard stretch is a place where they might pull up for a minute. Hey, we got one. Oh, we'll go back and fish this again. 12 1/4. So even though that fish was a dink, it was the first bite I'd had in 5 hours, and it was the first clue that I'd had. So I decided, okay, I'm going to continue to fish this a little bit more. and see what else happens. Fish it real good and real slow, and see if I can't catch another one right here in this area.
$13 3/4. Number 3.
So that's fish number 3, another dink, but it is fish number 3. And at this point, I'm trying to kind of weigh in my head, like, what do I need to do to salvage the day versus continue to try to, figure them out and see if I can't locate some bigger fish. At this point, I was more worried about salvaging the day and just kind of catching a limit. But I had pretty much finished this bank, this little stretch here, and I was thinking, okay, vertical bluffs where it kind of bottoms out in about 8 to 12 feet. I've been in this area before. I know of another place like that. When I finish fishing this bank, I'm going to go to this other place and see if I can't get another bite. So I get back to the area I was thinking about, and here in just a second you'll see this great big rock in the water, and it almost looks like it's cut, like man-made. I know it's not, but it's just got perfect right angles. A little bit of it's under the water. And there's just a little, maybe 11 or 12 inch fish sitting kind of on top of it. And I try to throw out there and catch it. And it just kind of keeps hanging around. And it's not very long after this where I really realize how bad I've messed up this day. Here in just a second, you can actually even see this little fish kind of just swim right past my kayak. And it's about right now where I realized that I've really screwed this day up. Because just on the side of this rock that I've already pretty much floated over, I looked down and there was a giant sitting on a bed with about a 15-inch male with her. She was probably 21, 22 inches, big fish. And you can even see her kind of in the light spot on the bottom by the base of this rock. She kind of is swimming off and then swimming back on, and she wasn't really locked on the bed, and neither was he. They were just they would swim off and then come back. And just knowing what I know about fishing in this clear water, and just from talking to people in the tournament, once they see you, it's pretty much over. But at this point, I didn't have a lot to lose, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to see if I can get this fish to bite. And I tried for 20 minutes to get this fish to bite. And a couple times I thought she might, but I don't think she ever really got that close. And then the more I started looking around right in that area I was at, there was another 17 on a bed or so, about the same depth, a couple other fish on beds. And yeah, I knew at that point that I had really messed up. So after messing with that big fish for 20 or 30 minutes, without anything to show for it. I didn't really know what to do next. I had just tried to bed fish for a fish, and I'm not very good at bed fishing, and it didn't work out for me. And so I'm thinking now it's about 1:30, hour and a half left. I'm thinking either I can go back to my little bluff and try to catch 2 more fish, or I can go try to find some more fish on beds. But after what I had just tried and how it didn't work, going back to find more fish on beds just didn't seem like the right thing to do for me. My inexperience kind of showing up right here. I just not very confident in doing that. I'm not very good at it. So I decided, you know what? I just going to go back to my little bluff and see if I can salvage the day and try to catch another fish there. So I get back to my bluff area, and I had kind of already decided in my head I either need to do the best I can here, or I need to swing for the fences on something that I am not very confident in. And I decided if I catch a fish here, I'm going to stick with it the rest of the day.
One more for a limit.
So that ended up being my last fish of the day. I ended up with only 4 fish all day. I had decided that if I did catch a fish, I was going to just stay there and try to salvage a limit. Probably not the wisest decision. It wouldn't have really helped me anyway. One more small keeper, maybe a spot or 2. But ultimately, this is an event I'm going to have to call for points. It was one that I probably should have tried to swing for the fences at the end and just go hit the backs of as many pockets as I could, try to see if I can find a big fish that was willing to bite. But it just didn't work out, and that wasn't what I decided to do. This was a tournament where my inexperience showed up in a lot of ways. I didn't realize that that's what they would be doing. I checked the back of a pocket or 2 and saw some bed fish later in the day. In the future, given the same circumstances, if you can't go down the bank just catching fish when the water's 64 degrees and, it's mid-April, then you better be getting your behind back in the backs of the pockets and coves and creeks and looking for fish. They're not in every one. I talked to a guy at the ramp. He said he probably caught 20 fish in this area because he found a couple of pockets that were just loaded up. But even we talked, and he said, you couldn't really get in there on top of them because they would scatter and not bite, but you could just make long casts to some light spots on the bottom and they could be caught. So yeah, it was a learning experience. What I learned is, if I can't catch them just going down the bank fishing, then I need to be changing something else up. Usually I'm pretty good at that. If they're not, on wood or rock or something like that, then, I'll go try something else. If they're not in the wind, then try where it's calm. If they're not on points, then try a bluff or a pocket or a creek. Anything, just change something up. Change up baits, change up techniques, change up locations, structure, cover, all that stuff. I have no problem changing that stuff up, fishing the moment, and letting the fish tell me what they want. But yeah, this was just one that you have to chalk up to a learning experience. I just didn't have them figured out. So we'll try to do the best we can to right the ship at the next event. But until then, thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.